Hi, this is Peter, and welcome to Season 1, Episode number 5 of our JupyterHub deployment. In this episode, we're going to hook up GitHub authorization. And hooking up that GitHub authorization will allow us to use GitHub usernames and passwords. So first, I just want to quick tell you about who I am and why I'm doing this. So I teach engineering during the day, but I also blog at Python for undergrad engineers. And also the author of the book Problem Solving with Python 3.7 edition, a beginner's guide to Python and open source programming tools. And you can pick that up on Amazon, and I'll put links to both of those in the description. If you want to see any of the code that's part of this series, you can find it at this GitHub repo. There'll also be a link in the description. And there's just a code of conduct that I always follow when I'm doing this. I just want to be friendly, patient, welcoming, considerate, respectful. I want to be careful with my words, make sure this is family friendly for all audiences, but do moderate your expectations. Don't do this professionally. I'm doing it in my free time. And when we disagree in comments, we'll just try to understand why, and a simple apology can go a long way. So JupyterHub is a way of running Jupyter notebooks in the cloud and will allow you to write and run Python code as well as other types of programming code without installing anything on your local computer. This is the JupyterHub documentation. And if you have more questions about what JupyterHub is, you can go here. The docs that we're following are here, and I built them with mkdocs, a Python package, and I'll link this down in the description as well. What we're going to be following through today is this GitHub authentication step. So before we get into our GitHub authentication, let's just review what we've done so far. So I'm going to go to the Linode dashboard and then click Power On in order to turn on our JupyterHub server. And so far, what we've got running is that we have local authentication hooked up, and we got JupyterHub up and running. But we want to now use, instead of local usernames and passwords, use GitHub usernames and passwords. So there are going to be a couple of steps to do that, but now that the server's up and running, I'll start PuTTY, log into the server, and do a sudo apt-get update. So I'm searching for PuTTY here, and want regular PuTTY, not PuTTyGen. And here in my PuTTY window, I've saved a profile for our server. And the important things are that you've got the IP address, and that in this connection data, you've got the username that you set up on the server. And then in this SSH auth section that you've selected your SSH key. But as long as that's all set up, then you should be able to log into the server. So I'm going to type clear to clear the terminal, and now let's update the system. So we'll type sudo apt-get update and sudo apt-get upgrade, and I'll type in my password. Wrong password. Let's try another password. That's the one. So this will just quickly update all of the packages that are on the server. And that's a good thing to do when we restart the server and we're changing our JupyterHub configuration. So once this completes, what we are going to do is hop back into the docs and see what steps we need to do to enable GitHub authentication on our JupyterHub server. So here in the docs, it says we've got to do a number of steps. We've got to install OAuthenticator on the server. We've got to create a GitHub OAuth app in our GitHub profile. Then we need to modify the JupyterHub config.py file to use GitHub OAuth. And then we need to restart JupyterHub and then see if we can log in with GitHub. So let's work on that first step, installing OAuthenticator. OAuthenticator is a Python package which allows you to log into JupyterHub with a number of different authenticator services. So the one we're doing today is GitHub authentication, but you can also use OAuthenticator to log into JupyterHub with Google usernames and passwords. And there are a couple other options. But OAuthenticator isn't built into JupyterHub. We need to install it. So it says that we should activate our JupyterHub virtual environment, and then after that we can install OAuthenticator. So I'm just going to copy this package name so that I don't misspell it. And now I'll go back to the server and type in our install command. So we'll activate the virtual environment. So we'll do that with conda activate JupyterHub env. This is the virtual environment that we set up on a previous episode. And now that we're in there, we can install. So in the docs it said install with pip, but I'm going to try to install with conda instead. So the command is conda install, and we want to do a EY for yes, and then -C to specify the channel, and then we'll specify the conda forge channel. And then I'll right-click to write the package name, and we'll see if this is on Conda Forge. So while it's doing that installation step, excuse me. All right. It says requested packages already installed. So I did install this one earlier, but it does work with that conda install step. All right. I'm going to quick run a command that will modify the command prompt. So I'm going to go here to the contents for today's episode, and there is just this little command that modifies the command prompt. So I'll do a copy and then paste. And what that command does is it just changes the way that the prompt looks here in the PuTTY window and is brought over by the server. So we've got our username, then JupyterHub server, and then the path, and then we've got an individual line that allows us to type our command. Alright, so let's see, conda activate JupyterHub. Oh, JupyterHub env env. There we go. So now it says we're active, and we can confirm that that package is installed, although it did say already installed, by issuing the command conda list, and that will list all of the packages in the virtual environment. And if we scroll here, we should be able to find the OAuthenticator package. JK, here it is, OAuthenticator. So that was successfully installed. Alright, so let's go back to the docs, see what our next step is. So the next step is we need to go to GitHub, and we need to log into our profile and then go to Settings, Developer Settings, OAuth Apps, and register a new application. So we'll go to our GitHub profile and then select Developer Settings, and then do the register new application. And these are the two important things to set in our application. We need to set our domain name, and then our domain name /hub /OAuth callback. And then after we do it, we've got to make sure that we save our client ID and our client secret. Alright, so let's go to GitHub. Here is my GitHub profile. I'm logged in already. And I'll go to Settings, and then scroll down here to Developer Settings, and then we'll click OAuth Apps, and here is where you'd want to create a new OAuth app. So I've already created one, and it's here in ENGR 101 Lab JupyterHub OAuth. But you just want to create a new OAuth app, and then remember to put in the domain name, and then the domain name /hub /OAuth callback. So I'm going to quick put the privacy screen on, and then from this I'm going to grab my client ID and my client secret. So with the privacy screen on, I scroll down here, and I can see that I've got my homepage URL and my authorization callback URL. And then I can also see my client ID and my client secret. So I'm going to copy my client ID, copy, and then I'll bring that client ID back over here locally. So I've got VS Code open, and I've got this file called GitHub OAuth example JSON. So this file is just a simple JSON file that shows client ID, and that's where you could paste the client ID. And then let's go back to the private screen, and I'm going back to GitHub, and now I'm copying the client secret from GitHub, and I'll go back to Visual Studio Code, and then here is where you want to paste the client secret. Okay, So I've got another file here that's called GitHub OAuth.json, and I'm going to paste mine in there, but this looks exactly like these set of JSON here in this GitHub OAuth example. So I'm going to go back to the privacy screen and open GitHub OAuth.json and then paste in the client ID and paste in the client secret. Then I'll make sure that I save. Okay, good. So I'm back here at GitHub, and we've got stuff now set up on the GitHub end. So let's have a little fun locally playing around with some JSON. So I'm going to go back here to Visual Studio Code, or maybe we could do this locally with the Anaconda prompt. Let's do it with the Anaconda prompt. So I'll cd into the directory where we saved that JSON file. That was the Season 1 Episode 5 directory. cd Season 01 Episode 05. And then if I do the dir command, because I'm on Windows, I can see this GitHub OAuth example.json file. Alright, so let's do a CLS, and now we'll type Python, and this brings up the Python REPL. So first let's open that JSON file. So f is equal to open, and then we'll paste in the file name. And then we'll open it in read mode. And now we'll read out the JSON with the JSON module. So we've got to import JSON. And now we can do j is equal to json.load and then that file. Now if I type j, you can see that we've got a dictionary that contains the client ID as one of the keys, and the value for that client ID is one of the values. And then for our other key, we've got the client secret for the key, and then the string that's the client secret for the value. So if we do j open bracket client underscore ID, that will return us the string that's our secret client ID. Note that I'm doing this from the example file, so that's not actually like the real secret. And we can do j square bracket client secret in order to get the string that is our client secret. So we'll exit out of the local Python REPL. And then I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and we'll talk about the configuration file that we are going to use in order to do this. So here I am back in Visual Studio Code locally, and I've got this GitHub config, or excuse me, JupyterHub config GitHub OAuth.py file. And let's just review what we've got in this file that we're going to move over. Maybe that's That's a little too big on the font. Let's go back. Maybe to here. Okay. So since we're grabbing that secret using JSON, we've got to import the JSON module. And then we're loading from the authenticator package that we installed this local GitHub authenticator class. Then we run the get config to get a config object, and then we set some attributes on that config object. So we set the authenticator class as the GitHub OAuthenticator that we imported above. And then we've got a couple of the other little pieces of configuration. So we've got the log level, and then this spawner command. And this spawner command spawns a JupyterHub single user. Then we've got our cookie secret files and our proxy auth token that we created in the last episode. And here in this code, what we're doing is what we just did in the Python REPL. We're opening that GitHub OAuth.json file. Then we're pulling out the JSON into a Python dictionary. And then we're calling from that Python dictionary the client ID key and the client secret key. And then we're saving them to these variables. Then after that, we set the OAuth callback URL to our JupyterHub URL /hub/OAuth callback. And then we set the client ID for the client ID that we got out of the JSON file. We set the client secret to the client secret that we got out of the JSON file. And we set create system users to true. And then I just added a couple extra to the authenticator whitelist, the people that are allowed to log in. And this is my GitHub username, so I'm saying that I'm allowed to log in. So we'll give that a save. And since this is stored locally, we're going to move it over to our server using FileZilla. FileZilla is an FTP client, so I'll type in FileZilla and open the FileZilla app. Here in the FileZilla app, I already have a site set up. So if I go to File, Site Manager, here in the Stream 2020 site, I just set the protocol to SFTP and then included the IP address of the server. I'm using the root login, and I specified a key file login type and then the SSH key that we created in a previous episode. So if that's all set up correctly, we should be able to hit connect and connect to our server. So on the left-hand side, this is the files on our local computer, and on our right-hand side, these are the files on the server. So we want to move over this JupyterHub config GitHub OAuth file, and we need to move it into the directory where the JupyterHub configuration file is kept. So we want to move it into etc/JupyterHub. So I've already got a JupyterHub config file in there. I'm going to drag over the JupyterHub config GitHub OAuth file, and usually it gives a little ding. And I'll also drag over the GitHub OAuth .json file, and we'll do an overwrite. Okay, so let's go back to the server and go to this directory and see if the files that we moved over are there, and then we're going to have to rename it to JupyterHub config.py. Okay, so back at the server, we will cd into the /etc/JupyterHub directory. And now that we're in that directory, if we run ls, we can see that we've got the GitHub OAuth.json file, and we can see that we've got this JupyterHub config GitHub OAuth file that we just looked at locally in VS Code. This is our old configuration file, and we want to overwrite that file. So there are a couple different ways to do this. I'm going to use the mv command and see if that works. We could also use cp, the copy command. So I'm going to type nv, that's for move, and then first is the source, and then space, second is the destination. See if it lets me do that. So now if we run ls, all we have is the JupyterHub config.py file. And if we do cat JupyterHub config.py, gotta do a lot of scrolling up because this is a pretty big file. But we should see all of those changes that we made in VS Code locally, like importing JSON and all that configuration that was there. Okay, so now that our file is, JupyterHub config file is updated, let's see if we can restart JupyterHub. So we'll do a sudo systemctl. Let's check on the status of Nginx. Make sure that Nginx is running. It says it is. It says it's active and running. I'll use Control-C to cancel. And then also, let's see if we can start JupyterHub. So we'll type sudo systemctl start JupyterHub to start our JupyterHub system service. And next we'll type sudo systemctl status JupyterHub, and we can see that it is active and running. So if I go back to my web browser here, we should be able to go to the domain that's hooked up to our JupyterHub server, and now we see that it says sign in with GitHub. So I am logged into GitHub. So if we click this, it says starting. If I was not logged into GitHub, then it would ask me for my GitHub username and password. But since I'm currently logged in to my account on GitHub, just let me log in. So let's click New here and select Python 3. And let's call this the new notebook. And we'll write just a little bit of Python code. So we'll do print GitHub OAuth works. Yay! You You can do Shift Enter to run the code cell, or click the Run button. Awesome. So it looks like we can write and run Python code in Jupyter Notebooks in the cloud using our JupyterHub server and logging in using GitHub usernames and passwords. So let's save this file, and I'll close that window. And I've made sure this worked before, so that's why there's another file in here too. And I'll go to the control panel and stop my server. And then I'll log out. Sweet. So this means that we've successfully hooked up GitHub authorization using GitHub usernames and passwords to our JupyterHub deployment. Amazing. So there are just a couple more things that we're going to do before we finish up today. So we're going to stop JupyterHub, stop Nginx, and then we'll go to Linode and make sure that the server is shut down. So I'll go back here to the server and do Control-C to get out of the status screen. And now let's stop JupyterHub. So we'll type sudo systemctl stop JupyterHub. And next we'll stop Nginx, sudo systemctl stop Nginx. And next we'll shut down the server from the command line. So we do that with sudo shutdown -h now. And it'll say that our network connection unexpectedly closed. So let's go back to our web browser and go back here to our Linode dashboard. And the final thing we'll do in this episode is power off our server. So I hope you can join me in the next episode. In the next episode, what we're going to try to do is use Google usernames and passwords in order to log into our JupyterHub server.